Welcome to another episode of Making Magic with your host, Bradley Morris from Magic Media. This is the go-to show for purpose-driven creators to get inspired with innovative new ideas to produce your educational content, build thriving online communities, and turn your message into a movement. Action! Dearly beloved, we've gathered here today to blend our minds to create something much more magical than we could do when we're just on our own. So, today's mini sermon is going to be short and sweet, I think. Because we had 4 launches postponed to spring, I have 6 launches happening between March 1st and June 14th, which is more launches than I've ever launched in all my years. I mean, typically if I do 6 launches in a year, it's a lot, let alone 6 launches in 3 months. But it's like a practice in focus, a practice in organizational structure. It's a practice in not having this by my side all the time, because it's really easy to like just press play on a podcast or watch a YouTube video or something like that. And instead, in my after hours, carrying around this handy little journal, and anytime I have after hours thoughts, I can just like jot them down and not need to necessarily take action on them, but to just have this notebook there so I can capture the things. And before going to bed, sitting up in my bed with my journal of like, is there anything that I need to remember for tomorrow? And just like making my little to-do list. I think the to-do list and being organized enough to know like, what are the next steps that I need to take? I know I have all these things that could potentially completely and totally derail me because of my overwhelm. But if I have this little notebook, then I know like, okay, I can organize what the next necessary steps are. What are the next people I need to reach out to and delegate or ask a question to, etc. And that's how I've been staying sane. It's how I've been staying grounded through this moment that I'm in right now, where we have all of these projects that are launching. And so far, I feel like things are going pretty tickety-boo. We're just about to close one of our launches for the business and meditation training. That begins tomorrow. And that launch has been going quite well. I'm very satisfied with how that's turning out. And then, we've got the next ones that are happening, and not just like the launches, that's just like the marketing and setting up the sales pages and all the sales emails and stuff like that, and the launch events. But it's also just like building platforms and organizing people's content and the worlds that we're building for them. So there's a lot happening. This journal right here, I highly recommend. Our family has a phone box now, so we put the phones in when I'm done work, and in the evenings we hang out. I do have a journal handy so that if I'm playing with my kiddo and I get an idea or a thought, or I remember something that I need to do, I just put it in. And then when I start my work days, I open my notebook. It's like, okay, here's the things that I remember. And then there's also what I have in my calendar. So my calendar is kind of where I block off my time chunks of like, I'm going to prepare this presentation at this time. I'm going to do this deck at this time. I'm going to read these sales emails for one of our partners at this time. That's all blocked off. But then there's those moments where it's like, okay, I've checked my emails. I've done the things in my calendar. I have a 2-hour space right now. I have an hour space or 30 minutes of space. That's when I go to this thing and I'm just like, oh, right, there was the thing. I got to send text messages to, I've literally right here, I'm teaching a workshop in Victoria, live workshop, and I've got a bunch of people in Victoria that I need to shoot a text message to and be like, hey, I'm coming to the city. I'm teaching this workshop. Want to come be my guest? So that's like on my to-do list for today. So having the to-do list organized, scheduling your success, and carrying a notebook around and getting off of screens so you're out of consumer mode and you're in open, receptive, creative thinking mode when you're in your after hours. Because if you're just watching videos and you're just in your podcast, you're not actually listening to the subtle subconscious speaking that's happening under the surface that's trying to tap you on your shoulder to get your attention. You need to create spaciousness for listening. And that's why we put our phones in a box at the end of the day until we go to bed, so that we can just be open, receptive, playful, and if anything comes up, it's not an emergency. Do now. I'm putting my journal I'll do it as soon as I start work tomorrow. So that is what I've been doing. That's how I'm staying sane through 6 back to back to back to back to back to back back launches. And so far, so good. The end and the beginning. How are you all organizing yourselves? How do you stay sane? How do you capture your ideas, your thoughts? How are you organizing yourself? Is it an app? Is it a notebook? Is it something else? What are you doing to capture and stay sane?
I have a similar approach. The things that come up, I've got a list of all the things, and just to get them out of my head. That's the worst. The most trouble I have is if I'm like, oh yeah, I can't forget to do this thing, or I got to call this guy, and then I have to check in on this, and I got to keep a running list of those. Oh, what was that thing I forgot? So this way, I just write it down, and then it frees up my mind. I can think about other things, and like you say, if I have 20 minutes here, an hour here, I just go to the list and be like, all right, what's most important, and what can I like realistically get done in this window of time that I have available and stuff like that. So that's huge, huge like scheduling.
Isn't it great? All the apps in the world that we could possibly use to organize ourselves, and still the notebook, most effective tool for writing things down. Because it's so easy. I mean, if all your to-do lists are on your phone, it's so easy to be like, to turn on your phone and then go to your social media app and be like, oh yeah, I was in here to write down a thing in my to-do list. I don't know, but this one, you can't like zoom in on your notebook. There's nothing you can do on it. Just paper and a pen. It's wonderful.
There's no notifications like, oh, this other page wants to show you a video or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's so funny. Claudia, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh, good conversation to be having, because I've been all over the place. I've been trying to figure out between digital and paper for a long time, and I've been a planner enthusiast for many, many years, and I've actually created some planners templates that I've never really launched, of course. But one of the things that, I actually at the start of this year, let me say that I started working with a woman who has her own version. It's called the Accountability Works Planner. And it's really big. It's too big. So it works really well for like big, monthly planning, quarterly planning, but in the day-to-day, I'm not running out the door with this, and it's like, it's a lot to carry. So I ended up getting a Moleskine just thing that I can throw in my purse. And just last night was reflecting on how the one practice I'm going to commit to is exactly what you named, which is brain dump, end of night, no scrolling, because I've been doing that again, and it's just so insidious. And in my job, it's really easy to go, oh, I'm just researching, what's happening in TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and like 2 hours later be so I've decided no phone at bedtime, and the Moleskine has to be right by me to just do that brain dump, because, well, anyway, I studied a whole bunch of things about brain science and how, if you give your brain that to chew on at night, that's all it's going to eat. Essentially, that's all it's like consuming, versus if you let all that stuff go, and then it can really get into the deeper parts that like you want it to be working on, and integrating. Anyway, so I was like, oh, that's a good way to think about it, and same in the morning. So I started morning pages at the beginning of the year. It was going great, kind of fell off. The last couple of weeks have been an interesting transition, I think, into the spring. Like we feel the energy, but it's still winter, and we're like, anyway, so I'm doing a cleanse next week. So hopefully that'll be like a good place to reset. But yeah, mentally, I'm feeling that need to have a grounded place where it happened. And actually, the one thing I'll just share is there is a woman that is a total creative. She creates, she's got her stuff licensed on everything now, but she's in Portland. And I went to one of her talks, and she basically said, look, I have 2 pages in my notebook. I lay out the whole week. Like I just do lists every day, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on one side, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday. And she just like makes bullet, you know, she just does a brain dump of what has to happen each day.
Yeah.
And then she'll go back and kind of go, you know, but she makes it a checkbox because she's like, there is this like sickness that we have around checking things off. And
It's so nice.
it's so nice. And then like there's a little bit of room like to make notes and stuff, but like there's her week right there in front of her. And I was like, so easy, so simple, so great. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, for anybody running a business where there's complexities of like dealing with multiple relationships. I mean, anybody that's running an online business is essentially running a media company. Doesn't matter how you look at it. You got to do communications, newsletters, you're doing marketing, you're doing videos, you're making audios, you're recording podcasts, you're publishing things. Like it's a complex system that we're creating. And then if you're somebody like you or Magic Media or what you do with your own independent business, Neil, it's like then you're also dealing with the complexities of other people's businesses and the moving parts of other people's business. That means they have multiple team members that you're in communications with. So having some form of system like the scheduling of success stuff, but also just like the how are you capturing your ideas, your inspirations, and your next steps so that when you have that hour of focused time, you can just rip through it efficiently without. I just noticed for myself, if I don't have a clear idea of like, here's all the things that have to be done before I'm done work today, it's so fun and easy to just go check out some videos on YouTube and just enjoy some entertainment. Before I know it, I've just somehow passed 30 minutes of YouTube shorts. Now that I'm making YouTube shorts, I'm definitely a YouTube shorts guy. I don't know how it happened, but it did.
I was thinking about you. I was on a whole thing about YouTube shorts and how, you know, Meta's dying and blah, blah. But before I hijack that, I was just going to say that between digital and paper, you know, that was always the question, because I have to organize digitally for the amount of people that I coordinate and projects that I coordinate. And so we've gone back and forth. We ended up with Asana again this past year for task management, delegation, etc. But if I don't do the paper piece, like the brain dump, sorting through, kind of like organizing my maze within, you know, then I get into Asana and I get overwhelmed, you know, because it's like I can't go from big vision to like logistical. It's just there's a step that has to happen where you process it. And that's like where writing it down on paper and actually going through the physical movement of it is really, really helpful. And then you kind of see, oh, okay, that goes for this project, that goes for this. And so, yeah, I think that's it's both and like, we do need the digital because it is something that you can share with multiple people and, you know, but yeah, it's really hard for me because that was the thing is I would try to just use the digital and I would at night was trying to go in and just, but I'd get lost in it, you know, and so that's what I think is helpful.
Yeah, it's a good point there. So like using the tools. So for our team, we'd use Notion for project management for all the things happen in Notion. We use Google Drive for all of our file uploads. We use Mighty Networks. So we've created a private community for Mighty Networks where all of our team happens, and each kind of branch of the team, production gets its own space in Mighty Networks. We have our publishing team, we have our tech team, we have our marketing and sales team, and each team gets its own space for its own conversations. And that's where like all the back and forth go is like, hey, everybody, I made this design. And then all the feedback happens inside of that Mighty Network space as a conversation. That's been really cool. I find like to use a Mighty Network for team management rather than like Slack or something like that, I just find is such a more personal, connected tool than Slack, which feels kind of weird. I've never enjoyed Slack, but yeah, it's like knowing what each tool and purpose is for. And I mean, that's been the journey with Magic, is like training everybody is like, we do this in this area, we do this over here, we use this tool for this purpose, and then getting everybody on the same page. And when everybody's on the same page and we're all using the tools in the same way, it really does help.
Oh my gosh, I've geeked out on this. Sorry, Neil, go ahead. I was just
I
gonna
was just gonna say,
hi David.
David, the whole thing about checking off things off your list and how satisfying that was a huge thing. I just wanted to circle back to that. But also another benefit of taking paper notes is that I find it helps me prioritize things in a different way, because once you get to the bottom of the page, the stuff you haven't checked off, you have to bring it over to the next page, right? So you have to rewrite it, and you have like maybe 5 things now on the top, and then you start adding. But then if you get to the bottom of that and you find things you're rewriting page after page, you're like, is this really something I need to do? Or was it just a cool idea I wrote down? Like, or should I just let it, I'm just going to drop it on that page and it's going to stay there. So you kind of drop stuff off your list too, because you're like, I really haven't gotten to this in like 3 or 4 pages. Do I really need to do it? You know?
Mhm. Yep. And I just think there's a difference between like a processing creative, yeah, it's really what we're doing is we're untangling all the web of our brains and then sorting through it and putting it into some sort of format. And then, you know, what Bradley was saying, like we've tried every platform to try and combine task management, files and assets, you know, calendaring, all that. Last year we went to Teamwork. That was one of the platforms that we thought was going to have it all. And it had like team chat feature, and none of the tools have it all. So you just kind of have to, and I've ended up going from like 6 tools that we use to like 2 to 6 again, to it's just this constant game. But I think that the idea of a Mighty Network is awesome, because I mean, it really is about, if you want to foster community within your team versus transaction. You know, I feel like in Slack, it's like, okay, did you get this done? Okay, great. Send me this. You know, it's very transactional. I started using it last year, but resisted it for up until then. And, you know, right now it's working for us because we don't have, you know, 6 launches and all that. I can't imagine. But yeah, I think the community piece feels better long term. If I were to start, you know, building out my team again, I think I would look into doing something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Making Magic podcast with your host, Bradley T. Morse from Magic Media. If you're inspired to leverage your life's work by crafting your transformational, educational, and inspirational media, thriving online community, profitable membership, or to turn your message into a movement, then head on over to magicmedia.com, that's MAJIK media.com, and explore what our Creators Club or partnership opportunities have to offer you and your beautiful business.